That's a lot of fun kills on this show, obviously, Sally. Talk about sort of the process of coming up with these different ones.
Well, that one I particularly love, and I texted Jodie afterwards, and I said that I think it's my favourite ever kill, and I think Jodie was just like, "Is it?" I think that you were. Oh my God, my dogs are barking now. I mean, for me, the process of coming up with kills, you've got to it is quite complicated, and sometimes I think we're more successful with them than others. But why I particularly like that one is because of the absurdity of it, and also when I look at it, I just see all the love that all the different departments have put into it. So, from the writing of it, and that scene didn't change that much from the read through, and quite often a lot of things do change from read through until we shoot them. And the actor who inhabits her, Villanelle's victim, was so brilliant, and I love the little backing up that she does, and the fact that she's playing this sort of scary game with the scariest woman in the world. And then I look at how we've got amazing directors on our show, including the fantastic Damon Thomas, who's been with us from the beginning, but this particular block was shot by Miranda Bowen, and the fact that the flowers matched her cardigan, and then the hiccups is something that's played through several episodes, and that's tied into the kill. I love all of that. And then the Tiny Tim track was something that the assembly editor laid up when she was just assembling the scene, and it stuck. And so I just love how right from the beginning to right to the end, everybody was just throwing their love into it, into this sort of extraordinary scene of this wicked murder. That's why I love working on the show, really.
Can I? It's so scary. It could be Stanley Kubrick. I mean, that's by the time, and of course, Jodie doing her amazing look of enjoying being scary.
I think it was the interaction as well. Sorry, Sandra, the interaction that she's having with the woman of what is it? She's so fascinated by her. She's like, ooh, what's she doing?
What's that?
Sorry, Sandra.
No. I was just to add to that. It's like, I think that's also what makes it character-wise such a great scene, is because this is kind of how we enjoy seeing Villanelle on her own the most. It's like you see her interacting with a human and being fascinated by humans, and then trying to engage it, because I always feel one of the most interesting things I feel about Villanelle is that you can see behind that she is trying to connect. She's actually trying to connect, but then shifting. So it's like Villanelle is amused and curious and with this human being, this lady, but then at a certain point you see her shift into her true nature, what she's there to do, but just that her nature will take over past her fascination or desire to connect, and she is what she is. And also that there is, I think this kind of grows, there's more reaction that Villanelle has to her kills. You can see her react to. Before, it was just a certain type of thrill or joy, or that she feeds off of it in some sort of ways. And I do feel like Jodie's doing just such a wonderful job of having Villanelle's orientation to her kills become more complicated.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned sort of her fascination of the world. I'm thinking about when she goes to the toy store, for example, to buy that stuffed bear, and she's just like looking around. It's almost like a foreign world. Like, what people enjoy this? Like, what is this? Am I supposed to enjoy this? And you see that over and over again wherever she's like interacting with the outside world. Like, how do normal people react, and how should I react to this?
Yeah.
And I love also the mix of fun and grotesque, which is sort of the hallmark of Killing Eve. And that's why that song, that Tiny Tim song is so perfect, right? Because that song has always been a mix of, sounds like it's a fun song, but it's kind of grotesque at the same time.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. So we have one more clip to show, and this is a great one. This came out of the blue. This is like, you're watching episode 3, and then suddenly this happens. You're like, did this happen? Is this a dream? Is this a fever dream? Oh no, this this is happening.
So,
let's show the clip.
For you.
I like it.
More social distancing.
Talk about that scene, Sandra and Jodie, in sort of creating that scene. How difficult was it to sort of choreograph that? What's going on there in episode 3?
Well, I think that was one of the first initial kind of conversations we had, was the physicality. You know, we knew that there was this altercation, but it was like, realistically, how do these characters react in this moment? And that was something me and Sandra spoke about a lot, just in terms of what Eve is capable of, or how you would actually react in that moment of utter surprise and kind of disbelief. And then we worked with the kind of the stunt coordinator, and we got on a parked bus and we kind of staged it through. But I think it was a surprise, and I've definitely sensed that from the audience. But I think it was a moment that felt very right, and it's also genius of Eve because it completely disarms Villanelle.
Yeah.
It's the best possible move she could have pulled, because Villanelle is just like, whoa, is, you know, completely taken aback.
Yeah. How about you, Sandra? What did you make of that scene and how that came together?
I remember when we first read that scene, I immediately felt, and I knew that was right. It was a right first meeting. It was a right way to get them back in, because it's almost like just the scenes between Eve and Villanelle are in their own bubble, like they're in their own world. You know, you can be quite outrageous in some ways where they meet, what they do, because they are creating they're so enmeshed in their own dynamic. It almost doesn't matter what else is happening around it, as long as that they're dancing kind of truthfully together. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun shooting that with our whole crew on a moving bus. And I think it was just a great way to see them matched up together. You know, again, you see these kind of like the classic kind of slick Villanelle moves that Villanelle thinks that she's so comfortable in, right? Like she's like, she doesn't know exactly what's going to happen, but you can see that she feels very comfortable and confident, kind of swaggering at the top, but through it, because Eve cannot control herself. And that's really the kind of inner emotional dynamic that is going on between them. But what you see is a person who knows that she is outmatched in strength and in everything, but still goes for it. You know, but it's also like, I think definitely for Eve, she's completely out of control, and her deepest unconscious behaviors come out, and that is to connect with that kiss, which is ultimately, I don't know, I don't want to put too many words around it, but affects Villanelle deeply.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Villanelle's face after that, and the part of her is like, that went better than expected.
She's like, whoa.
Didn't expect that to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, Sally, talk about that dance of keeping these characters apart. I mean, this is the soul of the show, but you can't bring them together all that often. So, how do you keep that dance going? What's the conversation like?
Really hard. It is just really hard. But what got going for you is sort of two extraordinary actors that you just crackle with energy, whether they're together or apart. And you know as well that both characters have awoken something else in each other, so that's constantly there. You feel that it's going on even when they're not together, and then you've got no idea really what's going to happen when they do come together. And I think the most important thing for us is that it's got to be different each time. You know, their relationship is moving on, their understanding about what the other has given them has got to keep shifting, and sometimes they are deluded about what that is. You know, sometimes they see it as they try to post-rationalize it as something, and it's not. What's talking is their ego. So you've got all of that to play with, but it is difficult. It's difficult. That's why it's fascinating to explore relationships within the framework of a genre piece about a female assassin. But essentially what you're doing is exploring relationships. And we've just got to keep that fresh and constantly think about the truth of everything. And when you get them together, so it doesn't feel like a moment on television, it feels like what two people might really do. But at the same time, it's got to be entertaining. So it's tough.
Well, mission accomplished with that scene, because I think that's exactly what we would expect both of those characters to do. And also, I mean, it was a shock. Yeah, a lot of times there's plenty of foreshadowing that those two are going to meet, but that moment you didn't see it coming.
Right.
I think that made it even more sort of just impactful. By the way, my favorite moment, we don't have a clip, but I just wanted to point out that I love the moment when Villanelle and Dasha have the baby, and Dasha just quietly throws the baby in the trash. And then the rest of that scene, there's an entirely different scene going on in the background.
Yeah.
Of people finding the baby, and Dasha and Villanelle are just having a conversation.
Yeah.
But again, like balancing, as the show gets darker, balancing the humor and sort of the dark comedy with what's going on, I know is tough as well. But there are moments that you guys are still pulling that off as well.
Well, we realised as well that is much funnier in the wide. You don't want to cut to the baby. You just want to keep it back there. And that baby was a brilliant performance. It actually popped its head up at exactly the right moment as well. So it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you like that.
Well, we're running out of time. I haven't brought up Nico yet, partly because, I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't gotten too far in the season. But, there's a lot more to come for folks who are just getting into season 3. Anything that any of you want to leave us with, your thoughts on sort of where things end in season 3 and sort of what we should be expecting long term with with Eve, with Villanelle, and where this story is going.
You know, well, I'm curious to know where, at the end, where Carolyn is going to go and how Eve stays in contact with Carolyn. That's all I'm going to say. And then I also say in a bit of a teaser, it's like I feel at the end of this series or this season, Eve and Villanelle are closer. They are very much closer, but not in the way that I think people would expect. You know, again, piggybacking a little bit on what Sally was saying, you know, well into the third season of this kind of dynamic needs to shift, and both characters have changed. And when they come to the end of the series, I just feel like the way that they know each other and in some ways depend or trust each other, it's a sense of trust that is outside of anyone else. Yeah. At least for Eve's perspective, yeah.
I think it's a sense of acceptance for Villanelle as well. Like this series ends so differently from the previous two, like so differently. Like I think people are expecting one thing and they're gonna get another, and it's actually really quite beautiful and quite emotional. Some of the moments that these characters share towards the latter of this season. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how people respond to that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Sally, did you have anything else you want to add?
No, I was just going to say what Fiona said earlier is like, we have peeled bits off the characters in this, but there is still more to come. And I think it's important. And also, as people are so complicated. And sort of exploring that complication and exploring relationships, I think, is something that we will continue to do.
Excellent. Well, thank you, all of you. Congrats on season 3. Fingers crossed that the world will eventually get back to normal.
I know.
But in the meantime, thank you so much, Sandra Oh, Jodie Comer, Fiona Shaw, and Sally Woodward Gentle. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us, and stay safe. Wash those hands.
Thank you.
And keep watching. If you haven't finished season 3 of Killing Eve, BBC America, go find it and watch the rest of it. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So good to see you guys. Oh,
yeah, love to see you.
Oh.